Well, could we get a worse bunch of reprobates to sit in front of us and pout for an episode of NEWSPASTY? No, we're going to have to go to Piers Morgan and look at this bunch. Yeah, Piers Morgan at the one end, Peter Fatchell over there. You got Ava Santina and Douglas Murray staring at you with his hell eyes. Ooh, hell eye Murray. Well, Peter Fatchell, if you don't know, the one just there with the rainbow tie on, he headed up Outrage. He's done lots of things. He was in politics for quite a long time. He was in the Labour Party, then he was an independent, then he was a Green, if I remember his bits correctly. Then he was part of Outrage, which was campaign to reduce the age of consent to 14. And he wrote a touching obituary, there's a pun in there, about one of the founders of Pi, the infamous paedophile information exchange. Yes, he did. And he said, I didn't even know who he was. I didn't know he was into that sort of stuff when I was writing his personal obituary. Ava Santino over there is an habitual whiner of the highest order with a merit and distinction in the art of the wine, and that's wine with a H. Wine. She actually works for the lowest form of political commentators in the land. That's Politics Joe. And we have another whiner. Yes, we have the queen of the wine. And here in front of us is also the king of the wine, Douglas Murray, the man who says absolutely nothing of meaning consistently. His whining comes with no solution, which doesn't lead to poorer men than him beating up fifth-generation immigrants in the street. Yes, and so we're on Pout Watch, people, because every single one of these guys, every single one of them, from including Piers Morgan, Fatchell, Tina, and bloody Murray, they're all pouters. So everybody watch for the pout. Now, in a sense, Piers Morgan's making pout face. And what's this? Classroom identity. This from a video entitled "You Haven't Even Built a Career, Have You?" That's one of Douglas Murray's lines, obviously, because he's built a career in nothingness, so he can't really claim anything new. Anyway, watch out for the pouts. Look at Murray. He's always looking straight on. He's like Robo Murray. He has his fist to the side. He looks on like, I'm going to run through this camera. I'm going to run through this camera and say absolutely nothing.
Well, the schools should not be tolerating
it. But the schools are not.
A teacher should not be saying, if you believe that women have vaginas and men have penises, you have to leave the school. That is
No, if you believe that sort of nonsense, you bloody well should leave the school. Men with penises and women with vaginas, you say? Oh, Santina doesn't like it at all. She's like, penises, vaginas. My God, what type of talk is this?
Complete nonsense.
No.
Right?
In this particular case, the Telegraph cited this handful of examples. They were by teachers, individual teachers. They were not school policy. And in at least one case, the school disowned the teacher and the policy and said that it wouldn't happen again.
But what about this case?
Okay, so, oh, the faces. Okay, I'm calling Pout on Santina there. That's Pout face. She's doing Pout face. Trout Pout. Put your Trout Pout over there. Murray, look at that. Like he controls his smile, his facial expression controls, straight face, and he has this slight delight on the side. He can't help but to have a wry smile. Douglas Murray has a wry smile naturally, and Fatchell, look at him, he's just he's lost in his own ideology anyway.
It's in Rye College.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are some examples of excesses, but on the basis of those exceptions, you can't make a generalised attack
in the center
on the school system and suggest that all our kids are being propagandised in this way, because it's simply not.
But when you hear
happening.
that teacher, I think, to bring Douglas back in, when you hear that teacher, there's clear evidence of what we've all been fearing has been going on, which is a teacher caught on tape literally spewing nonsensical gender ideology propaganda.
But one...
It's true that they do that. Of course they do that, because you put a range and a mix of people in the school, and then you pump them full of all of this stuff, and then you let them go, and then they go, oh my God, they're actually saying it out loud. You know, people are mostly reserved in these situations. They're like, "I'll be a bit careful," and that's how culture changes slowly. Is that people try and introduce new big changes, and then it slowly gets either worked in or worked out, and it either works or it doesn't. You can see there's a backlash against all of this, and part of the reason the ideology is being put in is to cause that backlash. Now, I say Piers Morgan's going for a pout.
Teacher,
yes,
only one teacher,
one teacher,
tens of thousands.
Hang on, one teacher caught on tape. Right, there've been many other instances of this being reported, but no one's actually had it on tape. It's a bit like, I would liken it to the Partygate scandal.
I would liken that to having no evidence. I would liken, you know, I can say there's a load of other teachers, and this will also be as true. There's a load of other teachers who are not on tape saying the opposite. There's lots of people who are not on tape saying all sorts of things.
When we finally got a video of the people having what was clearly a party, there have been lots of rumours about it. So now we have a teacher clearly on tape doing this
But
stuff.
it's not official school policy.
If I may,
Schools across the country are
Well,
not...
she's still, to my knowledge,
this.
she is still working at that school. Douglas.
If I may, first of all, Ava rather unfortunately misspoke earlier when she said that the schoolgirl in question was acting out a fallacy. I think you meant a fantasy. But actually she is acting out a fallacy.
Thanks ever
a
so
fallacy.
much. But do you know what I find fascinating?
She was right with fallacy.
Do you know what's fascinating about Douglas?
Which has been propagated.
You know what? Oh, Pout! I stopped on the Pout there. Oh, there's some good moves. I love this. I love the 4 cameras. That's brilliant. Okay, let's look at Piers Morgan. He's drinking out of the side of his mouth. Is that Piers Morgan drinking out of the side of his mouth? You're going to spill it on your shirt, boy. Factual's watching Morgan about to spill his drink. Ava Santina is saying the line, you know what's really interesting, you know what's wonderful, you know what's really interesting, you know what's fascinating about Douglas Murray, you know what's fascinating. And there's Douglas Murray, who looks like he can't move part of his face for all of the Botox. He can't move part of his face for all of the Botox. And he's between, hair-wise, he's between Keir Starmer on a bad hair day and Keir Starmer on a good hair day. Just saying that. I don't want to insult him too much, but it's true.
A fallacy which has been propagated by gender ideologues and is doing profound damage to gay people, among others, in our society, as well as women.
Like
and let me explain
explain
very quickly why.
Like you've ever cared, You're a far right Zionist, Murray. You believe in every ideology that can tear the system apart, like you ever cared. She's right, quite right there.
I can't quite hear you. I can hear you muttering something. Let me quickly explain why. A poll that just got published in the United States showed that among the general population...
Piers Morgan pursing his lips there. What's Peter Fatchell's just staring into the abyss, I think, but he pursed his lips because he showed that he quite enjoyed Douglas Murray saying that. He enjoyed it.
Support for gay marriage has been starting to decline
what you do with your
in the
lips,
last
Piers?
year. Why is that? It's because the arguments that actually brought about liberal rights for all minorities in the last few decades have started to get turned on their head and turned against people. What is the source of that? It is the gender ideology movement.
But this is like such a... This is why people like, and I'll say Jordan Peterson, Brett Weinstein, the intellectual dark web in general, Douglas Murray, loads of others who are anti-gender ideologues, anti-woke ideologues. They all have the ability to bat this out of the park. For me, I agree with them. So it makes me automatically, if I hear someone I agree with, so if I hear Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson, and I have no idea who Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson are, and I hear them saying exactly what I think is true, then I am going to turn around and say, "Ooh, Douglas Murray, he's on my side. He's saying the thing that I want to say out loud, but I cannot say." But it's one thing. So this is where we use, like, fallacies get used against it. They don't even have to use necessarily a fallacy, but it kind of is. We make him into a hero. So we make him into a hero because he says the thing we want him to say. Because he says the thing we want him to say. He comes across as a hero and we put him up on a pedestal. And he's not. If you actually took notice of who Douglas Murray was, he jumps on to bandwagons. He's a bandwagon jumper. And some bandwagons have a load of people crazy at the bottom, crazy on both sides. So Peter Fatchell and the people who are gender bending ideologues who want to convince kids that they should start cutting themselves and having life affirming surgery that will completely and utterly destroy their life and will stop them having normal family life later on. And everybody knows until you reach probably your 30s, you're probably not like sensible enough to make some decisions in your life. I know people will be like, but 18 is the law. It's like, I don't know anybody who is and who under the age of 30 made any sensible decisions or didn't make insensible decisions that led to them regretting things. Of course, when you're young, you do impulsive things. And so to convince that's terrible. So it's easy to knock out of the park. If you don't want people to suddenly say to your kid, you can chop off your willy or you can have a willy made, but you will never, ever, ever understand the touch of another human being in the way that you would if you did, But let's ignore that. Let's just look at the fact that you can be something that you're not, and you're not happy with what you've got. So if you can be something that you're not when you're not happy with what you've got, then what have you got? You got the ability to become whatever you want inside your fantastical mind. You go on a little fantasy, go on a little fairy tale ride, and then 5 years later, you're regretting heavily. 10 years later, you're depressed. 15 years later, you're another statistic. And a lot of this is happening for reasons. I mean, a lot of this gender ideology stuff is happening because of, I think personally, because of one statistic that the manipulators of society worked out they could take advantage of and caused enough shock and awe amongst the normal members of civil society that it said something needs to be done. And that's the amount of people who with gender dysphoria went on to kill themselves or try and kill themselves. And that number is extremely high and always caused concern. And so people looked for a way around it. And that was taken advantage of by a load of groups who want to cause, who want to bring about the age of fifth generation warfare that we're currently entering into. And Douglas Murray is able to bat that out of the park. So he stands there with being easy-balled, soft-balled, and he's batting them out of the park one after another. That does not make him a good player. It does not mean that in proper championship conditions, Douglas Murray can actually hit a ball when you've got a good pitcher. Ironically, he actually run away, crumble, do all the opposite, because that's what these people do. They say a lot of stuff. Nearly all of them say a lot of stuff, but they don't have any backbone, and they're just batting off against each other.
What is the tripwire for the general public? It is children. It is people learning that their children are being taught nonsensical things. It is being seen by the wider public, most of whom are heterosexual and don't...
You jump on an obvious point. It's still, you have to... okay, right. Even though I said you should note the pout, I think you'll see that on the right of this screen, the two on the right, Ava and Douglas, both have pout face almost permanently. And on the left here with Fatchell and Piers Morgan, they both got pursed lips. Isn't that very interesting? Purse versus pout. Percy pout. Pout, purse, pout.
Need to identify as cis or anything else. It is being seen from that vantage point as the LGBTQIA plus movement losing control of itself. And so a backlash is starting. And the backlash is coming because people are lying to children and are using children for medical experiments. There's nothing funny about that. There's nothing...
Oh, that's ridiculous, says Ava Santina, who's going to have to say later on, yes, I didn't know what was actually going on. So, understand that. They are using kids for medical experiments. They've been experimented on kids for ages. None of this was a definite form of surgery or operation or branch of medicine, like changing genders, has not been something that is actually possible, isn't probably going to be possible for a long time in the future, until a long time in the future, has never been possible. So it's all experimentation. There's nothing sure about it. So it's all experimentation. They are experimenting on people. So saying they're not experimenting on kids makes her wrong. And then suddenly, and here's how the fallacy works. And this is what NEWSPASTY is all about. It's about noting the fallacy, that pasty hanging around there, you know. Douglas Murray is not a champion of you because he says the right thing at this moment in time. Stop thinking like that. That's how they keep you in their trap, because there'll be another time where he'll say something else. And if you go with him, or you look around and the people who are going with him will all be just like blind to what they're actually doing. This is how it works. This is how these people are created. This is how what these people are for. They're to make far right people march out on the streets and fight muzzos or whatever. You know, that's what they want. They want Nazis fighting muzzos. Ooh. They want Hamas supporters fighting far right in the street. It suits them. It suits their agenda. Look how bad the world is. I can make this world better for you. You know, there's right-leaning, fascist. Some of us call it like Nazi, but little socialism about it.
That should cause levity in that. It should be treated by adults seriously.
Okay, no, Ava?
So, Douglas, it's really important, actually, all of that point that you've just brought up, it's very on brand for you because, you know, you like to stoke fear. You've actually made a career out of it. I'll take you back to your book, The Strange Death of Europe, and you made a big fright, you know, you frightened the entire public about your thoughts on Europe, and we ended up in Brexit. You weren't the sole contributor to that, but you were a big
Can we
voice
stick on to the...
Ava.
Well, he didn't make everybody fear. It was rubbish. It's the same thing now. It's, oh, look, the foreigner. Oh, Johnny Foreigner's coming. He's going to take all your stuff. It's the same thing now. And it's the problem is, and this is why he's got so much fuel, he's got so much more pace now, is because it's true. It's true. It's becoming made manifest by the policies that are seeing people, immigrants moved around the place. And, you know, however much, you know, like with the idea of things like the Kalergi plan. Yeah, there was there's this what's called a conspiracy theory, and it has to be called a conspiracy theory because it's one line taken out of a bigger work, and it's been used to mean, oh, look, someone must have read this and then done this because this is what's happening. And it was the fact of like basically mixing all races so that they you know, everybody's basically the same. Now that all of that stuff is happening. Of course it's happening. If you want to look virtuous and like you care about other races, and you go to the extremes of that, then you bring in other races and then you all mate together, and soon there's no other races. Have you ever been to South America? I mean, South America has masses of indigenous population, but the majority of people basically look like the conquistadors. Why is that then? Wonder why that is. Why do you think a lot of the people who live in the southeast of England probably could be described as looking like they're from the north of France? You know, why do you think these things are? Why do you think in the Middle East? Yeah, and I've done research on it. You watch News Theory Part 2. Palestine is a conspiracy theory if you want to know more about this. But the Palestinian people are 50% to 80% related to ancient Canaanite, Bronze Age Canaanite people, yeah? And 50% plus of the Jewish genetics is also related to Bronze Age ancient Canaanites. The people merge, mix, and it doesn't change after a certain time because there's a massive homogenous group. If that is allowed to go all over the world, is that was made true all over the world and everybody was to mix around, we'd soon have a very boring place where there was no point to go on holiday, no point to go visit anything, because all the cultures are the same, all the languages are the same, all the people are the same, and you can't see anything new. One of the most wonderful things about this world is that we all have different views. Each of these people doesn't want that. They want you to have their views.
Well,
If I may say so
now
very
we're talking
quickly.
about LGBTQ,
If I may say so
and you're
very
creating.
quickly,
Hang on,
Piers.
you spoke. I'm speaking.
No,
I'm speaking.
I'll
you spoke.
reply.
This is. I mean,
And I'll reply.
Hello. I haven't
Let
finished.
Ava speak, please.
Now
Douglas.
back on the trans issue. When you're talking about
Yeah.
LGBT.
Douglas Murray, that's the only way he can. So if he sees an argument coming that he knows it will be hard for him to use any of like nuanced arguments, he'll have a prepared argument. So he knows before she's fully said everything, his roughly prepared argument. And this is normal. This is human. We all have an idea, an opinion in our brain of how things work, and when we get questioned on it, we say these things out loud. So he's going to do this. He has it ready. But is it going to be true? Is it going to be honest? It's Douglas Murray.
What you've just done there is basically say that the whole of America, who have historically had a problem with gay marriage, are now turning on it because a couple of children in a classroom in Sussex want to be a cat. If you can't see the ridiculousness in that argument, I can't help you.
The bigger issue is there is no such thing as gender ideology. We all.
Look at the Batchel's come in on purpose here because he realized Ava didn't do a very good job. Douglas Murray is over singing. He's singing a little ditty. No, no, no. I don't love Ava Santina anymore. No, Peter Faccio. No, no, no. Peter Faccio. I made myself laugh. I should have done that. Sorry to everybody. I hope you laughed at that. I'm just here laughing to myself. I got me, my doggo Bella laughing. Well, she's not laughing. She's looking at me like she wants snacks.
all have gender identities. You identify as a man, and I fully respect you.
Well, no, hang on. I don't identify as a man. I was born a biological male.
Yes.
That's where this whole thing
Piers, you need to let me
goes
come in.
rogue. I'll bring you back in, Douglas, as I want to say. That's where the whole debate goes rogue. You were born a biological male. You were born a biological
This is
female.
really interesting. Right, he's quite right. Yeah, biological female, biological male. That is true. The identifying is nuts. Identify means you fantasize about being. I think we should change identify as fantasize. I fantasize about being a man. I fantasize about being a woman. I fantasize about being this. I fantasize about being that. They've seemed to have mixed up, and this is really, I mean, I've never thought of it quite this way before until right now. And this is why things like this are really important, to sit down and actually talk about what you're watching. If I watch this alone and I'm not talking about it, I'm not thinking about it properly, I'm just looking at it. Taking in their opinions and putting it in my brain. Basically, it's very much, sorry, look at the pout there. Ava's pouting again. Purse lips from all of the men here. Percy and Pout. It's true. I think it really makes sense. They just changed the term fantasize for identify. And you just got to flip them around and stop using it. I think that then I'm going to force that language upon them. They want me to use they, them, or etc. And well, why would I not use or get them to use identify and switch it with fantasize? Because then we'll be on the right level. Then we'll be able to have a conversation. Won't we? We'll be having a conversation because we'll be working in the world of facts. That something is a fantasy in your head. It's not ever going to be. You can't identify as something you're not. So it's always going to be a fantasy. So you fantasize about it. And listen, it's not bad to fantasize about changing yourself. It's bad if that those fantasies affect other people really negatively. People, especially when it's to do with sex, because that stuff doesn't doesn't ever go well.
Genders, and you can identify as anything you want. You're going to end up with kids at school going, I'm a horse, and you've got to treat me like a horse.
Piers, you're confusing two things.
No, I'm not.
Sex and gender.
I'm not.
I accept.
Oh, this is like the mix up. Oh, quick. Okay, you're mixing up sex and gender. No, you're mixing up fantasy and identity.
They are being conflated.
But biological sex is one thing which I totally accept, and so do 99% of the people in the LGBT plus community. Gender is something different. Gender identity is how you see yourself.
And do you believe it's limitless?
Douglas
No, I
is
don't
going to
believe it's
lose his
What's the
train
limit?
of thought.
Well, there was basically male and female and intersex, but there are people who have different gender identities.
No, but how many genders are there?
Well, there is no fixed number.
So what's the limit?
I don't see a particular limit.
There's no limit. So when you said
no
there's
limit.
you said there is a limit. Now you admit there's no limit.
Sorry.
Well,
There is male and female
is
identity.
there a limit or not to
There's
the number of
intersex
genders?
identity.
No, that's sex.
Oh, this is
on gender,
cringeworthy.
is there a limit to number of genders?
Well,
What's amazing, right, is that if you watch Douglas Murray, and we'll do this afterwards. Okay, we're going to do this afterwards. Let's watch Douglas Murray's mouth throughout the whole thing. Because he has this rage of, like, he can't hide his glee. I could potentially make a brilliant argument. Ooh, I could potentially make a brilliant argument. My argument's gone downhill a bit. Oh, make a brilliant argument. And the argument's really, really base argument.
There are some people who are asexual. That's an identity.
No, there are
some
the BBC.
people-
The BBC has put in education videos. There are 100+ genders.
Well, I don't agree with that.
So what is the limit? What's the number?
Well, I'm not going to specify a particular number, but it's very small.
But where do you draw the line?
Well, I draw the line based on science and evidence.
Well,
we
they
know
never come
that
back
there's a
to
thing called
Douglas.
intersex, where people are
Douglas
born with a
is
mixture
just
of
gonna
both
make-
That is
male.
literally what it says on.
He's just
That's
gonna
what it
raise
says
his
on the email. That
eyebrows.
is intersex.
He's gonna move his
People are
mouth.
born with chromosomes from both, right? That is a medical condition. That's inarguable. Like, we're
What
talking about
is
gender.
happening
Well,
here?
Douglas, trans identity is
Douglas.
also a biological
Douglas.
fact.
No, but once I
rooted
Peter
in
Fatchell
brain structures
taking
and
over on
processes,
purpose.
But once
as the new
people-
science shows.
But once
They
you get
don't
to
want
100 genders,
Douglas
people
Murray
get
We're not
on there.
debating 100 genders.
Well, actually, the BBC has taught kids that. This is back to Douglas's point about affecting the brains of impressionable young kids.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the BBC if they're saying
Okay.
100+ genders.
Okay, Douglas.
Very quickly, I don't know, Ava, anything about your career. I don't know if you have one. But you did try to imply that you knew something about mine, and you just showed you know nothing about it, because actually my 2017 bestseller, The Strange Death of Europe, was not about the EU. So you should learn at some point to read more than the title of the book before commenting upon it.
It was about migration.
But let me very quickly...
And how rude are you? How rude are you?
Very quickly.
You built a career out of fear-mongering, and you're now importing this evangelical American
She's
idea
built a
into
career
UK
out of
television.
talking over
Very
people.
odd.
Career, have you? You haven't
What are
even
you
built a
talking
career.
about?
Yeah,
I had the
she
same
worked-
panel as you had, and we're getting the
Wait,
same.
You know what? I'm going to...
Wait a minute. He's saying she hasn't built a career. She works for the lowest denominator on the legitimate, supposedly legitimate mainstream media, which is Politics Joe, the bottom of the rung. If you want someone who's probably going to be lying to you nearly all the time, go to Politics Joe. So he's right again, but doesn't mean he's right about everything.
Wrap it up by saying you've both got wonderful careers, or you wouldn't be on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Yeah, that's not true. That's not true at all. I think we all know that's not true. Wow, that was special. There was less pouting than I thought. It ended up with Douglas Murray having a little smile. If he's able to smile with all of that Botox, I don't know. Ava Santina's Twitter photo looks completely different than Ava Santina there. It's like a definite Tinder thing. Oh, wow, look at her. Oh, Ava. Hello, you look like you're whining. And then Rainbow Tie Satchel, he's just staring across. I always think he's looking into the nothingness, into the void. Satchel. Anyway, that was enjoyable, was it? Well, it wasn't for me. Maybe it was for you. What, it wasn't for you? Then why are you watching this? Oh my God.